Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another Shadow Era A to Z series video. And if you've been keeping track, then you know what this video is going to be. Or if you could read video titles, you know too. This is Boris. And if you haven't seen Boris by now, you're probably living under a rock or something. My list may be slightly different. I'll explain as we go. So, starting off, 21 allies on the list. We have 4 Laerian Knights, 3 Alden the Braves, 2 Fleet-Footed Messengers, 4 Laerian Seductress, 4 Yari Marksmen, 2 Yari Plunderer, and 2 Visca the Scarlet Blades. Then I have 13 abilities. I got 4 Crippling Blow, 2 Bad Santa, 2 Smashing Blow, 4 Blood Frenzy, and 1 Enrage. Finally, 5 items, 4 Gemstone Javelin, and 1 Dragon's Tooth. Now, where is the changes going to be a little bit? So, the main difference here is probably going to be the 2 Fleet-Footed Messenger. Some people will put 2 Tainted Oracles instead. Generally speaking, 2 Bad Santa and 4 Blood Frenzy isn't quite enough for you to have consistent draw in your warrior deck. You would need something else, like Logan and Vess have weaponsmiths for pulling pithing spears, for example. So Humonk will have the 2-cost Wisp that can seek allies, right? So they all have this little bit of extra draw to wean through the deck. So in this case, it comes down to either Messenger or Tainted Oracle. I prefer Messenger. Couple of reasons for that. One, it goes well with Alden the Brave. So if Alden the Brave is already on the board, you can bring Messenger on turn 4, for example. Say you don't have a Santa or a Blood Frenzy. Messenger come in turn 4 with 2 attack. Hit in, cycle a card in your hand and hit for 2 attack haste. So that's pretty nice to do. It also helps if you have extra Blood Frenzies in your hand. And you already sacked a card in your hand, right? Sometimes that happens if you played Warriors or you have an extra Bad Santa, you don't need it, and your sack's already up. You can use Messenger to cycle one of those cards that you don't need to try to pull something else from your deck, like a Gemstone Javelin, okay? 2 Plunderers in this deck. Some people use 4 Plunderers. I like instead of 2 Visca, they'll have 4 Plunderers. I found 2 to be enough to bring back your Tooth, bring back your Javelin, and since we do have Alden in the deck, then I like Visca. I don't like playing Visca in decks that don't have an Alden or a King's Pride or something to boost the attack, because I feel like that 3 attack haste on a 6-cost ally just isn't value quite enough to me. So like Victor decks have Alden, right? Same reason. So that's why I like to have Visca in here, and Fleet-Footed Messenger, 2 hasted allies to go with that Alden. Laerian Knight now. In the past, Yari was a bit more viable when Marksman got the extra boosted damage, or at least having Blade Dancer splash in this deck instead. When Marksman got the boosted damage from Yari, Marksman does not have that anymore as part of the nerf. So we're doing Laerian Knight. To be honest, I was doing Laerian Knight before because I like its extra stickiness on the board. Even a hasted Visca that doesn't have any buffs can't kill it because of its damage reduction. So I like Laerian Knight's damage reduction early. If you're playing a Shadow deck and they drop a Deathmage Thaddeus, you're going to die anyway. Nothing you can do about it. But overall, I do like the Knights for most human decks. Laerian Seductress, pretty standard. Because then they play more allies after that because that ally's stunned, and then you drop a Marksman and get that boosted damage in there. So that's a nice combo to have. Seductress, Marksman with those crippling blows. 2 Bad Santas, 2 Smashing Blows. 2 Smashing Blows, guys. Some decks on the ladder will use 1 Smashing Blow, but if you're planning to bring Boris to, say, a tournament, you want 2 of them. 2. See, I know, my hand's off the screen. Maybe I should use this one instead. Okay, 2. Alright, 1 Enrage. If you want to go a little bit more, like 41 cards, you could put a Rampage in there. I have noticed Boris plays really well with that Rampage, especially in like a Boris versus Vess matchup. Vess has a ton of healing, so that Rampage can help you get over that Vess healing hump. So if you know you're playing Vess, and you have some extra cards you can tech in, I would squeeze in a Rampage in that matchup. 4 Gemstone Javelin's pretty standard, 1 Dragon's Tooth. Again, if you want to go to 41, you could put 2 Dragon's Tooth, like if you know you're playing a Lance, if you know you're playing a Zana. Maybe Victor. Not all Victor decks now are using a lot of fatties anymore. They're still using some, so maybe you could have 2 Dragon's Tooth. But again, you have 2 Yari Plunderers. You don't really need extra Dragon's Tooth. Plunderers is going to bring them back. And you have Fleet-Footed Messenger to help you pull cards from your deck. So I think that this list overall feels really good for Boris. I really like how it feels. So now let's go back to our cabin, guys, and let's talk about the matchups of this deck. Okay. First, let's go over what you're weak against. You're not weak against a lot with Boris. Victor is kind of 50-50. The deck that is probably auto-loss for you, whatever nearly impossible to win against, is Irem Lost. Lost is a beast to play against. Maybe even Irem Nishaven. Because the thing is, you have a lot of board control. You have a lot of board control pieces in your deck. Not a lot of damage from hand. Mages do not need to put allies on the board. The only thing they need is for you to put allies on the board. And you as Boris need allies on the board to win. So, ta-da! Bad matchup. Okay. Zal is kind of 50-50. What helps out is the fact that you don't have a lot of high-cost allies, as you saw on the deck. 3 attack is the most that you got for allies. So mind controls don't hurt as much. But again, Zal has a lot of options for damage from hand, whether it's Zealot, whether it's Krygon, whether it's Cultist into Devour, whether it's weapons, the ability, Shadow Fonts, Soulbound Armor. Zal can just keep hitting you right from hand. Doesn't need to leave allies on the board to get that damage in, and Mind Control to help finish it off. Again, 50-50 matchup there, though. Because all of Zal's allies are really weak, and Boris chunks Zal's allies. So it can kind of go either way there. Let's see, other matchups. I would say weapon decks that have a lot of weapons, because you do have 2 Smashing Blows. Baduru, as long as you have the Smashing Blow in hand when Baduru's ability goes off. If you have that Smashing Blow in hand for that first ability, you're probably going to win that game. If you don't, you're probably going to lose that game. RNG, guys, gotta love it. So that's that. Darklaw. Ooh, Darklaw is rolling with basically 8 weapons nowadays. Doesn't need to summon them for free either, so to really be effective. So I would actually say Darklaw is a harder matchup than Baduru overall. Granted, you get rid of Darklaw's allies pretty easily, but again, a lot of these allies for Darklaw, their effects happen right away as soon as they hit the board. So they don't really need staying power. That's the thing with their allies. And plus, he's rolling like Midnight Howls, too, to haste them in. So again, another tough matchup there. Let's see. Zana's not really that difficult of a matchup, I saw. Sometimes it can be, but most times it isn't. Zana does tend to save those focus prayers to get rid of your Dragon's Tooth. But again, because you're so strong, you're so much stronger than Zana early and in the mid game that you've chunked Zana's health pretty hard by the time she gets to that late game. That's why that matchup isn't too bad. So not really an issue there. Same thing with Lance now. You've really chunked him pretty hard by the time the late game comes around, and you have those Dragon Tooths too. Obviously, you don't try to put a Dragon Tooth on the board when the ally is stealth, because Lance is just going to use like a Stop Thief and get rid of it. So not really much point there. Decks that you are going to crush against. Elementalis. You are going to destroy Elementalis. Same thing with Homunculus. You're going to absolutely destroy them. Because you play that mid-game just as hard as they do, but Boris's ability means none of their allies are going to be able to live on the board. On top of Javelins and Marksmen and Seductress and Crippling Blows. Try as they might, they're going to have a hard time. The only time you would have a tough time against Elementalis is if you don't have these early mid-game cards and Elementalis is rolling with 4 Vermins. There are versions of Elementalis that don't roll with Vermin. They roll Feastling instead to get bigger burst damage early to try to win the game out. Because Elementalis isn't a card that type of deck that wants to keep rolling through the game. Their jaw just can't keep up with it. So that's why a number of elemental decks switched to Feastling. So yeah, if it's the Vermin version, and they have a strong start with Vermin on the board, and your attachments aren't doing anything, then it can be a problem. But typically it takes a while for your attachments to build up. You know, a 1 Blood Frenzy and 1 Crippling Blow is typically enough to handle the early game. So 9 times out of 10 you're winning against that Elementalis. Same thing with Reika. Hawk Reika. 9 times out of 10 you're winning against that deck too. Tiny Yathan. Strong as that looks right now, 9 times out of 10 you're winning that game. So yeah, that's what I'd say. You're really strong against those decks that are trying to play early mid. Boris is probably the strongest ally in the game right now for mid game. So these decks that are trying to run early. I would say Rush Mages too could give you a hard time, but again, you're really strong in the mid game. So if you have a bad mid game start against a Rush Mage, you can probably lose that game. Because if the Rush Mage gets out of the early game on top, they're just going to spam spells for the rest of the game. They're not going to play a single other ally. So that's when you can have a bad time there. So that's it for Boris. This video was a little longer because Boris is just so strong right now, guys. I would say top 2 in the meta. Either Boris or Victor. I tend to lean towards Victor for the strongest hero right now, but Boris is easily top 2. Easily, even if you don't put number 1, he's number 2. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will have another one very soon for you guys for the series. See you next time.